Another church is in the news because of allegations of abuse. A Church of England bishop calls for the resignation of the Archbishop of Canterbury, saying that his position has become untenable after failing to report abuse that was associated with the church. If you are new to this channel, my name is Joanna Daniel. I'm a counselor and author, and I work with adult survivors of childhood trauma and women who experience abuse. Apparently, the Archbishop of Canterbury did not follow up rigorously enough on allegations of abuse. The review of the church's handling of the case said that they could and should have reported the cases. And once again, we saw this 2 weeks ago with the Channel 4 piece on the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And here we are again with another church that could have, should have done something. And I hope that all denominations are learning from this, so they're not the next one in the news, that they're not things that they could have, should have done, but that they're things that they're actively doing right now to safeguard children and young people. And this gentleman was able to not just abuse young boys in the UK, but he went to 3 other countries and was able to abuse in those countries as well. And in some countries, abuse reporting and rigorous follow-up is not as perhaps as happened here in the UK. So he went to places like Africa. He was able to abuse young boys there too. Now, there is a chronic failure among church leadership around how they deal with abuse. And we see a consistency of failings, a consistency of children and, vulnerable people getting hurt because churches are failing to follow up on allegations of abuse. And it really is important that they start to take notice of this, that churches start to take notice of this and seek to do something. When allegations of abuse are not made in a timely way, it prolongs the abuse. It leaves room for the perpetrator to continue harming children and young people. It leaves room for them to move from one place to the next and to continue the abuse in that new location, because oftentimes the report doesn't follow them. Oftentimes the church in that new location is not notified of this person coming in and who they are and their potential. And so they turn up, and the church we are known for opening up our arms and embracing people, and understanding safeguarding and be comfortable with reporting people and not continue to cover up abuse. Because when we do that, we're prolonging the psychological harm and the spiritual harm for children and people that are in our care. Because what it tells young people is that we are not living what we preach. That's one. And two, when abuse happens in a Christian setting, in a church setting, by people who are respected spiritually, there's a detrimental also spiritual abuse that's happening. And there's so many wounds that this person has to unpack in order to heal. And so that's why leadership have this massive responsibility of ensuring that they protect children and young people. Now, according to the BBC, this man's abuse took place over 5 decades and 3 countries. That's a long time and a lot of people. These are some of the reasons why people are losing confidence in church. Many people are leaving church for many reasons, but one of the reasons people are leaving church is because of how allegations of abuse are managed or mismanaged. Lots of people have lost trust in leadership, because often leadership ignores perpetrator and leave them to carry on their campaign of harm in the lives of innocent children and young people. In the lives of children and young people, they're just left to carry their reign of terror in these young people's lives. What is going to solve the safeguarding crisis that churches are having? The churches are having a safeguarding crisis right now. What is going to solve that crisis? As I said in my video about the Seventh-day Adventist Church, based on the piece that was done by Channel 4, it cannot be just DBS check. To me, DBS check is necessary, important. It's a necessary measure that organizations need to put in place to safeguard, but it can't be the only measure that organizations put in place to safeguard. DBS check will not solve the safeguarding crisis that church denominations are currently having around allegations of abuse. And we know that even though these allegations, these cases that are being reviewed and we're hearing the recommendations are historic cases, we know that it's happening today. There are people hurting right now. The pain of abuse lasts for a lifetime and sometimes generations. And so that's why it's so urgent and important. But back to the safeguarding crisis. The safeguarding crisis that the church is having is not going to be solved by a DBS check. The safeguarding crisis that the church is having will be solved by rigorous reporting and follow-up systems. Systems needs to be put in place where people know exactly how to hear an allegation. Firstly, people need to know where to report an allegation. People need to know how to take that report of allegation, and they need to know what to do with that report of allegation, an allegation of abuse. Now, what to do with it can't be the church board. It can't be the pastor, because the pastor and the church board cannot investigate allegations of abuse. It has to be passed to the police. The police or the appropriate services that are in place in your country to investigate abuse. It cannot be the pastor or the church board. There are too many conflicts of interest. There lack of sometimes education around abuse. Our feelings get involved. Very rarely can we as humans stay neutral in these situations. And so it's really important that there is a process that is consistent, that everybody knows. It can't just be people in head office that has this information. It must be people in every local church that has the information about how do we carry out safeguarding procedures in a way that is going to keep children and young people safe. We do not want this decade to be where our children are reaping the consequences of our failings. We can't give that legacy to our children, the one that we have inherited. We have to do something about it. So people need to understand how to report to the authorities, how to record, how to report. What I've seen is that somehow churches are reluctant to take this very decided stance against abuse. Members, we can demand change. You as a member in your church can demand change. We when things are going on in society, we lobby our MPs and we write letters. Here is a way that you can take charge in your church. You can write letters. You can hold leaders accountable, question leaders, report things that you see. We do not, as members, do not press these situations. Sometimes change will not happen, because what happens is that sometimes they come up in the news, they disappear. The news cycle moves fast, the allegations disappear, it's buried on someone's desk, and something else that is more urgent takes precedent. And we know that the lives of children are impacted. And so members can demand change. Hold leaders accountable. Hold leaders accountable. I know sometimes leadership feels untouchable in some places. There are many leaders who do not understand how to apologize, how to take responsibility, how to be accountable. Who do they report to? The leaders in your church, who do they report to? Ask questions. Who is your supervisor? Who is in your direct line of reporting? And report. And sometimes I know when reports are done or people are asking questions, they're shut down or sidelined or seen as troublemaking. But if enough of us are asking questions, if enough of us are demanding change, if enough of us are asking, what are the safeguarding procedures? Has this case been followed up on? But we also, as we're doing that as members, have to face some things that maybe will be uncomfortable for us as well. Because sometimes if the allegations are against people who we love, if they're against people who we hold in high esteem, we have to be prepared to ask questions, to be uncomfortable, to report, to hold leaders accountable, to hold ourselves accountable, so that the next generation, our children, will not inherit legacies of failings around safeguarding that we have done. How do you feel about these latest allegations that are in the news about another church that has failed to support and to protect children and young people and have exposed them to more harm? How do you feel about going to your church and asking about safeguarding and reporting procedures? How do you feel about holding leaders accountable? Do you feel that leaders now should be held accountable and more things should be done? It should be more transparent around safeguarding so that everybody can be safe, so our children are not inheriting failings around safeguarding that we have done.